An unhinged Chinese wolf warrior diplomat threatened to cut off the head of Japan's prime minister. Will this backfire on China? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Before I begin, I got a real problem. YouTube has once again put China Uncensored into the algorithm black hole. Each episode I've put out has been performing worse than the previous. The last episode only got about 30,000 views. Remember, over 2 million subscribers, but only 30,000 views. And I checked with some of the other big China YouTubers, Serpenzetta, LaoY86, David Zhang. Same thing is happening to them. Have people just suddenly decided they don't like videos about China? Well, I have another possible explanation. Wolf says it's pretty consistent. I didn't get your videos for 6 months and had to type it in manually to find it. Dragon says, was thinking about the lack of China news on my feed. Here I am manually searching for the channel again. Wayne says, I have never received a notification. Luckily, I look for your videos daily. It's the only way I know. YouTube is clearly censoring on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. They don't want you to know the truth about China, and they're trying to run me out of business. That's why I can't say enough how important it is for you to subscribe to my personal website, ChinaUncensored.tv. It's free from big tech censorship, so we can have great conversations, live streams, and I even put episodes YouTube wouldn't allow on the site. Please check it out, or else China Uncensored really might disappear, and not just because the algorithm is hiding the show. So here's the kind of story the CCP and YouTube would like to hide from you. China has gone completely off the rails with Japan. Well, even more so than usual. They're more off the rails than the flying train in Back to the Future Part 3, which was when the movie, both literally and figuratively, went off the rails. Anyways, earlier this week, China's Consul General in Osaka, Xue Jian, attacked Japan's new Prime Minister, Takaichi Sanae, by threatening to cut her head right off. Which, of course, was just figurative speech for cutting the head off the power structure. And no, I'm just kidding. He straight up threatened to murder her, saying on X, if you go sticking that filthy neck where it doesn't belong, it's gonna get sliced right off. You ready for that? Again, that was one of China's top diplomats. Very diplomatic. Not sure I didn't specifically name Takaichi, but the post was a direct response to another post that talked about Takaichi's stance on Taiwan, so the context was pretty clear. Of course, Xue has since deleted the post, indicating that he may have overstepped the bounds just a little bit. That poor fool, doesn't he know? Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. Although as far as I'm aware, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has not publicly apologized for Xue's comments. But this isn't the first time Xue has gone completely crazy with wild threats against public officials. Back in October, Xue made the exact same threat to U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, saying, preparing for war over the Taiwan issue is useless. Anyone who sticks out their necks will simply have them cut off. Okay, this guy's been playing way too much Mortal Kombat. Easy on the fatalities, Xue Kang. That was in response to Hegseth saying that the U.S. is making Japan a war-fighting base to deter China. And as of this recording, that post is still up, probably because it didn't get nearly the same response as him threatening Takaichi. And, as if that weren't enough, in November, Xue also implicitly threatened all Japanese people, saying, I hope you regain at least a minimum level of reason and respect for the law, think rationally about the Taiwan issue, and ensure that you never again suffer ethnic annihilation like your defeat in the war. Is that a reference to Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Man, I haven't seen someone this try-hard edgelordy since the last episode of Kill Tony. Still, it's the threat against Takaichi that has generated the biggest reaction. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Kihara Minoru described the remarks on Takaichi as highly inappropriate, which I'd say is an understatement. Publicly threatening to sever someone's neck from their chin lands more in the cray-cray territory. And a number of public officials said it was time to designate Xue as a persona non grata, a legal term for a diplomat who is no longer welcome in the country, and send him back to China. This was said by former Japanese ambassador to Australia, Yamagami Shingo, Fukushima Prefectural Assembly member Watanabe Kohei, House of Councilors member Yamada Hiroshi, and many, many others. They want him kicked out of the country. Preferably bicycle kicked out, to stay on the Mortal Kombat theme. People abroad were just as angry. One European Parliament member said what utterly disgusting remarks, typical of communists around the world responsible for tens of millions of dead. Yes, very typical indeed. If only they had used friendship instead of fatality. I even settled for babality. Meanwhile, the US ambassador to Japan said the mask slips again, and time for Beijing to behave like the good neighbor it talks repeatedly about, but fails repeatedly to become. So why did Xue make such bombastic comments? Nuclear bombastic in referencing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Well, this is part of the CCP's attempt to bully other countries into doing what the CCP wants. The CCP has always been a bully, whether it's through words or through physical acts of violence. And Takaichi did the one thing that the CCP simply cannot stand. She showed support for Taiwan. Even before becoming prime minister, Takaichi was vocally pro-Taiwan. Earlier this year, she visited Taiwan to meet with Taiwanese President William Lai, and even hugged former Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. Now that's friendship. She also proposed a quasi-security alliance involving Japan, Taiwan, Australia, India, the Philippines, and European partners for mutual protection. Why does this feel like NATO 2.0? As Prime Minister, Takaichi met with senior Taiwanese presidential advisor Lin Xin-yi at the sidelines of this year's APEC summit, which might explain why Mr. Winnie the Pooh here was so grouchy when he met her. Just look at their faces. These two do not like each other. But it's what Takaichi said last Friday that really drove pro-CCP shills like Xue nuts. Takaichi told Japan's lower house budget committee, if warships are used and other armed actions are involved, I believe this could constitute a survival-threatening situation. She also said Taiwan's situation has become serious. We must assume the worst-case scenario. This was similar to comments she made last year when she said a blockade of Taiwan may become an existential crisis. At any rate, it involves Japan's survival. This is huge. And not just because this is one of the rare instances on this channel where I get to actually report on someone having common sense when it comes to the CCP. A survival-threatening situation is a specific term that legally justifies the use of military force even if Japan's not directly attacked. And it's appropriate for Takaichi to use it. If China were to conquer Taiwan, it would break the first island chain, which includes Japan. Breaking that would greatly expand China's ability to project power. That would be a death sentence to Japan. It would not only put Japan's economic lifeblood under CCP control, but also give China a huge military edge over Japan. In other words, the Japanese Prime Minister's words very publicly signal that Japan would fight for Taiwan. And they probably wouldn't only use swords like Decapitation Jones over here. This makes Takaichi the first sitting prime minister to publicly suggest military action in response to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Even Takaichi's mentor, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who legalized Japan's use of force to defend Taiwan, never brought up an attack on Taiwan as warranting a military response from Japan. Or at least he didn't do it while he was in office. He did so after retiring in 2021. China, of course, isn't happy that Japan's openly defending Taiwan. Some, like former Japanese Prime Minister Hatoyama Yukio, even go so far as to parrot CCP talking points by claiming Taiwan is an internal Chinese affair that Japan must not get involved in, which roughly translates in coward to quick, do nothing harder, and hope they'll actually stop escalating this time. But here's what they don't get. From the CCP's perspective, China is already at war with the Western world, including Japan. Yeah, I know they're in the East, but tell that to China. China's already rapidly expanding its military and putting pressure on Japan, with incursions into Japanese territory involving Chinese ships, aircraft, and drones. Even without the military, China's been attacking Japan by weaponizing trade with Japan, conducting influence operations inside Japan, imprisoning Japanese citizens, and encouraging hate against Japanese people through education. Look at these kids practice stabbing the Japanese, as well as the movies. Not to mention disinformation, which in turn encourages dehumanization and violence against Japanese people. The best way to secure Japan's own security as well as Taiwan's is to have more deterrence, not less. It's like having a roach infestation and saying, don't lay any traps, that'll just make them angry. Just leave more crumbs on the floor and they'll probably go away. Fortunately, Japan seems to be taking steps in the right direction. Earlier this year, Japan launched its new Joint Operations Command to unify coordination between the Japanese ground, maritime, and air self-defense forces. It also allowed the US to train with the Nemesis anti-ship missile system from Okinawa for the first time. No, not this Nemesis missile system, although I suspect it would be effective. Hey, I have a gaming channel now. Check it out. Japan also conducted mine-laying drills near Taiwan as opposed to further north like usual. And the stated purpose for the drill was not the usual message of enhancing the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force mine warfare capabilities, but rather to demonstrate our nation's strong determination to not allow any unilateral changes to the status quo by force, while aiming to strengthen regional deterrence and to maintain and improve mission execution capabilities. I can't wait to see what Japan will do to outrage Xi next. Looks like it's gonna be a hard road for China as the battle rages on with this Iron Maiden. And if you're wondering why I'm making all those metal band references, well, it looks like Japan's got a metal head on its shoulders. One that would be very hard to decapitate. And remember, if by some miracle you're actually watching this episode on YouTube, click this button to go to my personal website and get off YouTube before it's too late. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching.